Salut classe, pour la dernière partie de ce leçon, on va focaliser sur 5 verbes qui ont un participe passé irrégulier euh, et ils suivent la même forme, le même motif des autres verbes, du verbe RE, IR et ER, mais le participe passé est un peu différent. Okay, so up until now, when we've talked about the past tense, the passé composé, okay, in French, we've focused on the regular verbs that we've learned, regular ER verbs, regular IR verbs, and regular RE verbs. And those verbs, just as they followed a regular pattern when you conjugate them in the present tense, they follow a regular pattern with their past participle, with their past tense form. Of course, there are lots of irregular verbs in French, and as you would probably expect, the past participle is also irregular. That being said, these are verbs that are very common and that you have heard and you will continue to hear all the time. So, yes, they're irregular in the fact that they don't follow the same pattern as these other ones, but by the same token, they are very, very common and they're very easy to grasp. And pretty soon you'll recognize them just as quickly as you recognize the verbs that follow these regular patterns. Okay, so we'll focus on these 5: être, avoir, faire, mettre, et voir, and then you'll see what I mean here. Okay, so here's un petit tableau, juste comme j'ai fait pour les autres verbes. On a le sujet, ok, le pronom sujet, je, ok. Note bien comme j'ai fait le J apostrophe parce que c'est j'ai, ok, parce que tous ces verbes sont auxiliaires avoir. Okay, so all of these verbs have the helper verb of avoir. Okay, so I've gone ahead and conjugated them for all the different subject pronouns. Okay, so you get that little review there. And then there is the past participle with the infinitive, l'infinitif entre parenthèses. Okay, so j'ai été, I was. J'ai été à Spanaway la semaine dernière. I was in Spanaway last week. Okay, j'ai été. J'ai eu. J'ai eu. J'ai eu un accident de voiture. Okay, I had a car accident. J'ai eu. J'ai fait. J'ai fait. J'ai fait mes devoirs. J'ai fait un gâteau avec mes filles. I did my homework. I made a cake with my daughters. J'ai mis. J'ai mis mes clés dans mon sac. J'ai mis mes clés dans mon sac. I put my keys in my purse. J'ai mis. J'ai vu. J'ai vu. J'ai vu un oiseau dans l'arbre. I saw a bird in the tree. J'ai vu. Okay. So these are the past participles for those verbs. Été, eu, fait, mis, vu. All right. Oui, c'est un peu, I know it can seem a little redundant. You have avoir here and then, avoir again. Tu as eu, you had, did you have? Okay. So, yes, you always have to have all of the parts for the passé composé. That is why it's composé, composed. You always have to have the subject, this auxiliary verb, which matches the form, matches the subject, and then the past participle, which is the action part of the verb, which explains which verb you're talking about. Now, as I said, there are lots of other past participles for irregular verbs. So I've put a few here. Okay, so these are I've highlighted the ones that we're talking about for this chapter. But as you may recall, we talked about the verb prendre in the past. It doesn't, remember, it's a little bit irregular in the present tense because remember when we get into nous prenons, we drop the D. Okay, so it's a little irregular. It doesn't follow the regular RE pattern. Well, as you can see, the past participle doesn't follow the regular RE pattern either. So I included those because we did talk about prendre, to take, in the past. So prendre, pris. Apprendre, to learn, appris. J'ai appris, I learned. Comprendre, compris. J'ai compris. Okay. So as you can see, there are patterns within the irregular verbs, but in and of themselves, they are considered irregular. Offrir, to offer, to give, offert. Ouvrir, to open, ouvert. So you aren't responsible for knowing those ones right now. I just wanted to let you know that those are there if you did want to note those down and use those. Another bit of vocab that I wanted to draw your attention to, which is actually from the last chapter, and we have I've kind of tried to slip these in the past, but these are very helpful expressions. They say for conversation, mais c'est pour la conversation, pour écrire, pour communiquer, hein, pour indiquer l'ordre des événements. Okay, so these are very helpful expressions to indicate the order of events. Think about as well, we talked about in chapter, je crois c'était leçon 16, when we did, premier, deuxième, troisième. Those, are another great way to, first, second, third, to organize what you're trying to say, and these as well. Okay, so we have d'abord, d'abord, first, d'abord, après, après, after. Ensuite, ensuite, then. Enfin, enfin. Finalement, finalement. So these words are very helpful to insert into your writing, into your speaking. It really helps the person you're talking to kind of orient themselves with your thought process. They also come in very handy as you are leveling up in proficiency when you're maybe not using the exact conjugation or you can't remember. If you can slip in one of these words, this really aids in helping the person you're talking to understand what you're trying to say, which is also part of leveling up and getting into that intermediate range. Okay, so I would note these as well and try to insert these where you can. Now, that being said, I have taken my little slideshow that I did, Mon Voyage à Paris, and I turned it into a text. Okay. And in that text, I've added some of those helpful words for conversation so you can kind of see it more in context. And I've created an assignment. So I'd like you to read through this text. I've also recorded myself saying it. And your task, um, your one specific task for this particular text is to trouve les infinitifs. Okay? Et si tu te poses la question, qu'est-ce que c'est un infinitif? Un infinitif, c'est le forme du verbe, regarder. Okay? The form that hasn't been conjugated. Regarder, choisir, être, vendre. Okay? The form that exists when there's not a subject. So when you look at the assignment, you'll see all the verbs are conjugated because I've written it. It's a little story. You have to go through and identify what verbs are those. Okay, so it's just identification. All right, but it's also an opportunity for you to read and to hear me, which will help you with the following, with another assignment that I'm going to give you, where following the same kind of pattern, you are going to create a narrative in the form of a diary entry, an email, or a letter in the passé composé, describing one of these imagined, sorry, I forgot the D, or real past situations. You must use at least 10 verbs from the list below and put them in the passé composé to describe either A, one of your days at home during the confinement, B, one of your days at school prior to the confinement, or a memorable day from a past vacation or an interesting time. Okay. So your assignment must be in French. You have to use at least 10 verbs from the list below. Okay. You can see that there's 18, there's 18 verbs for you to choose from. You can use other verbs too, but I have to see at least 10 from that list. Okay. You must use the passé composé, following the pattern of subject, avoir as the auxiliary, and the past participle. And of course, your story must be school appropriate. Please know your audience. It must be your own work using concepts and vocabulary acquired in class. So I want to see you demonstrate what we've been working on the past couple weeks. So, in order to start your writing, if you're doing a Dear Diary, share journal intime, Dear Diary, or you could do Mon cher journal, My Dear Diary. Okay. So, either one of those, if you're doing a diary entry. If you're writing a letter or writing an email, you want to start out with share, which means dear. Notice how you add an extra accent and an E when the person you're writing to is a girl. So I need to see one of those to start out your writing. Okay. Then to finish up, after you've written your 10 verbs describing your past situation, okay, you're going to take these verbs here in the body of your email or journal entry. When you're all done, you're going to sign off. Okay. Amitié. Okay. Friendship, friends, amitié, and then sign your name. Bien à toi. Okay. Good wishes to you. Bien à toi. Je t'embrasse. Okay. It's kind of how French people would say love. Okay. I hug you. Je t'embrasse. Okay. So any of those would be okay to end your journal entry or your letter, but I need to see both of those. All right. If you have any questions, but you're going to be using these verbs, so you're going to have to look back at how do I put these in the past participle? Are they a regular RE verb? Are they one of the irregular verbs? Are they an IR verb? And notice I didn't put a lot of ER verbs in here. You can add in other ER verbs if you would like, but I want at least 10 from this list. Okay, bon courage.